In this video, I'm going to show you how to get another 100,000 miles out of your automobile. And that's assuming that you have a car that's in excess of 10 years old or has more than 100,000 on it. Well, let me back that up a little bit. There's nothing I could tell you to do today to help you get another 100,000 miles out of your car. So I'm going to notch that down a little bit to 50,000. And I think you can get another 50,000 after that. The things that I'm going to tell you to do applies pretty much to any car. In some places I've seen this tune-up type of conditioning to a car referred to as stage 0. And some people may consider it restoring a car to its original condition. So let's get started. The problem that a lot of people have with older cars is they're afraid to drive the car out of town. So they'll have these cars, they're afraid to put any money in them, they don't think they'll last much longer, and they just do minimum things necessary to keep the car on the road. Well, I want to encourage you to go ahead and get aggressive in getting the car back to stage 0 or its original condition so that you can get another 50 or 100,000 miles or more out of the car and be able to drive the car anywhere that you want to drive it. This car that you're looking at right here is a 1995 Volvo. I've driven this car from Phoenix to Salt Lake City, Utah, to Atlanta, Georgia, to Raleigh, North Carolina, to Cincinnati, Ohio, all this year. And part of that trip, I actually towed a U-Haul with this car, and it has an excess of 243,000 miles on it. So, if you want to feel comfortable in getting in your car, driving it anywhere you want, racking up the mileage, and not worrying about it breaking down, not even once, you want to do these things that I'm going to mention here. So sit tight and be patient and make a checklist. And I'm going to also post a checklist on my website so that you can use that as a guide. And I'm also link videos in the body of this video in the comments section so that you can see the other related videos that will link to what I'm going to recommend that you do. Now guess what? Most of what I'm going to tell you to do is right here in your trusted owner's manual. So you get the owner's manual of your car and go through the maintenance section, and that'll tell you pretty much what you need to do to get this car in top running condition. I want you to have this car in top running condition so you can drive it anywhere you want and enjoy it while you do so. If for some reason you don't have an owner's manual for your car, go to the manufacturer's website. Volvo has owner's manuals for as far back as I've looked for their cars, and so do a lot of the other manufacturers. So if you don't have an owner's manual handy, go to the website for the manufacturer. Then you want to look in here under service and routine maintenance, and that's in section 8. When I flip back here to section 8, it'll tell me things that I need to do to get this car in tip-top running shape. It'll have the maintenance schedule and other information. So when I look through the manual, I want to find the page that tells me what things I need to do at certain mileage: change, replace, service. As you can see, it tells you how often to change your oil and oil filter. It tells you how often to change your engine drive belt, every 60,000 miles. Air cleaner, air filter, 30,000 miles. Spark plugs, 30,000 miles. So you want to make yourself familiar to this maintenance chart and follow along with how often you should do it. There it is, timing belt. You want to do that every 70,000 miles. If you don't have a mile interval there, you can go ahead and look down there. Now, after you do the things I recommend, you can start this chart all over as if you have no mileage on your car. Well, once you've decided that you're going to try to get another 100,000 miles out of the car, or 50,000, before you start soaking other money into it or doing a bunch of work on it, you want to have a compression test done or do one yourself. They're relatively easy to do. Basically, you pull the spark plugs, you put the gauge down in there, you disconnect your fuel source, disconnect your ignition source, crank the motor, and see that your car has good compression. You can find out what the compression should be on each cylinder. Make sure your motor's in good health before you go putting money in it and bringing everything up to standard so that you don't waste time and money into a car that has a bad or worn out motor. Now, the things that I'm going to recommend you do, I want you to do them, especially if you don't have written documented proof that they've been done. If you have written documented proof that the timing belt and related components was changed 5,000 miles ago, then follow the owner's manual recommendations and don't do it again for 5,000, 50,000 or 70,000 miles, whatever the owner manual recommends. Now, if you have something that you don't have written documented proof on, I say change it just to be on the safe side. And normally, if you do these things in the next 3 months of your car ownership, you won't have to worry about that car running for at least 50,000 miles. First thing you want to do is change your spark plugs. If your car is old enough that it has spark plug wires and it doesn't have ignition coils, check the wires and replace the wires. On this car, the wire actually has dates on them. It'll tell you the month and the year that these wires was last replaced. So if the wires are over 10 years old, go ahead and replace them along with the spark plugs. And since the car has wires, it also has a distributor cap and a rotor. So that'll be a full ignition tune-up. Spark plugs, wires, distributor cap, and rotors. And I do have a video linking to how to do that on most cars. The thing you want to do is check the car for any leaks, oil or coolant, and fix any leaks. If you have a radiator leak, go ahead and replace the radiator. If you have a hose leaking or bulging, go ahead and replace those leaking parts. A leaking car, especially coolant, can actually cause you to blow the motor. So replace any leaky parts. Next, if you have a timing belt, find out when the last time that belt was changed with related parts, which is your tensioner and your rollers. If you can't figure out when that was done and have written documented proof, have those things done so that you don't have to worry about it until the next time interval, whether it's 100,000 miles, 70,000 miles, or 50,000 miles. Now, if you have a timing change, usually timing chains will last 500,000 miles. So you normally don't have to worry about that. But again, check your owner's manual, see what they recommend, and keep it along with your maintenance schedule. Next, you want to find out the recommended change or service interval of the transmission. A lot of cars say that you don't have to change transmission fluid ever, but I'm going to tell you this. When your car's out of warranty, the owner, manufacturer is not going to be the ones that's going to service that transmission. So you can have the fluid checked and tested, but in most cases, have the fluid changed. I don't support the power flushes, but find out how to do a drain and fill of the transmission on the car and have that done. On these Volvos, the transmission fluid dipstick is hidden down under some intake tubes. So you might have to find your way to the dipstick in the drain plug, but figure out how to get that transmission service, especially if you have in excess of 100,000 miles on it. Very few people do this next one, and that is have your brake fluid changed and flushed and replaced with fresh fluid. That is supposed to be done on most cars every 3 to 5 years. So if you don't know how to do it yourself, get your car to a service center, have them replace all the brake fluid in the car, and that will allow your calipers and your brake lines to stay in good condition. Neglected item is having the coolant system replaced and refreshed. So you should have your coolant drained, flushed, and replenished with fresh coolant. And that should be done in some cars every 150,000 miles, every so many years. If you don't have any written documented proof that it's been done, I recommend that you do it, because you want your coolant to be properly mixed with a 50-50 mix in most cases, and with the right type of coolant fluid. I was reading a post on a website the other day where a lady was told that the coolant was good, it had been replaced, and a month later the temperature dropped below 20 degrees. The whole entire system froze because the person that had the car before her had only put water in the system. It froze, she started the car, it busted the water pump, destroyed the motor, And the fact of the matter is, if she would have had that service done on that car, she would have been in good shape and would have been safe. The car is over 10 years and has more than 100,000 miles on it, either or, I say replace all of the coolant hoses. Not just your radiator hose, all the coolant hoses. This car has an upper radiator hose, a lower radiator hose, a coolant hose going from the thermostat to the bottle, a hose going from the bottom of the bottle back to the block. It has 2 heater core hoses. I want to tell you, track down every coolant hose in the car and replace it, because if you have a hose burst while you're driving, the fluid will leak out within a few seconds, the car will overheat within a few seconds after that, and then your motor will be blown. So in less than a minute you could blow a car if your car blows one of those old hoses and all the coolant leaks out. Replace all of the coolant hoses. You want to find out where all your filters are and replace them. You could start off by replacing the air filter and then keeping that on the proper change interval. Then you want to do the cabin filter and replace that as often as the owner's manual recommend. Then you want to find your fuel filter and replace that. And look in your owner's manual and see if there's any other filters like a transmission filter. So replace all of the filters in the car and you should be good to go in keeping the car running healthy. Next thing you want to do is find out if the car has an EGR system or if it has vacuum system. They all do. Find those vacuum lines and replace all of the old vacuum lines. Some of them are in bad shape at this mileage. They have cracked connections. They're leaking air, costing you fuel economy and causing dirt to get into the system. So you want to make sure you replace all of the vacuum tubes, and especially if you have a PVC system like this car does. If you have a car that has a mass flow air sensor, you want to get some mass flow air sensor, clean it. If your car has a throttle body, you want to get throttle body cleaner and clean it. If your car has some kind of air valve that can be dismantled and clean it. Clean your valves and sensors that have the ability to have their valve and sensors cleaned. Do a good inspection and replace any soft or worn out intake hoses. On turbo cars, they usually have more air in intake hoses than on non-turbo cars. But if you got an air tube coming off your air filter going down to your throttle body, if that hose has any cracks or problems with it, you'll need to get those replaced. And if they're old and soft and seem to be brittle, go ahead and replace those air tubes and intake tubes so that you don't have any problems with them in the next 10 years or 100,000 miles. Now, these cars are fuel injected cars. It'd be a good idea to put you some fuel injector cleaner in there, especially if your car is telling you through your computer system that it's running rich or lean. If you have a rich or lean fuel mixture issue, you want to go ahead and get that repaired and possibly replace your O2 sensors, especially if they're in excess of 10 years or 100,000 miles. A leaking fuel injector or a car running rich or lean can cause you to have burnt valves. You don't want to destroy your motor because your fuel injectors haven't been cleaned or are not in good shape. If you think you need to, you could go by a shop, have the fuel injectors removed, have them tested, cleaned, and replace any bad fuel injectors you have on your car. So, I usually run Lucas fuel injection cleaner in my car every 90 days or every 2,500 miles, whichever comes first. So give a regular supply of fuel injector cleaner or have your fuel injectors professionally cleaned. Another thing you want to do is have your battery tested and your alternator tested and replace the battery if it is deemed to be bad, because you don't want to get stranded somewhere because your battery won't crank. And then once a year or once every 2 years, you want to take the battery connections apart and clean in between them with a wire brush or a battery post cleaner, and then put them back together and spray them with corrosion prevention or put petroleum jelly on them so that your battery posts and things don't rust and cause you to lose good charging service. So make sure you keep your battery clean at least once a year, every 2 years at the most. Now, those are the maintenance items to keep your car running good and healthy for the next 50 or 100,000 miles. A few other things you want to do to make the car comfortable for you is you want to check your shocks and your suspension. If you look at your top of your shocks, as I am here, if you push the car down and the car goes down and up, the car should, when you push it down, it should come up and stabilize. It shouldn't bounce 2 or 3 times, and it shouldn't be real spongy when you do that. If that's the case, you probably need new shocks. If you're going over humps in the road and you can hear or feel your car bottom out, you may need to get new shocks. Also, if you feel jittering in your wheel when you're driving along, hearing clanking noises, the car is wandering right or left, get a car aligned. It would be a good thing to have an alignment check. And if they tell you you have worn parts like control arms, ball joints, or things like that, go ahead and schedule to have those things done in the near future. So check your suspension for worn suspension parts and shock replacement. What you want to do is check your tires. Make sure your tires are wearing evenly, and if they have some bald spots on them or the tread's real low, schedule to get your tires replaced and get some good tires if you want them to last more than 20,000 miles. So check your tires, replace worn one, and it'd be a good idea to get a good spare. I even have a full size spare in my car, so if I'm traveling and I get a flat tire, I can simply replace the tire, keep on rolling without any issues. Another thing you want to do is check your brake pads or have someone check them for you, and if they need to be replaced, go ahead and replace them. Front brake pads will normally last around 50,000 miles. Rear brake pads will normally last somewhere around 80,000 miles. So get your brakes checked and get the ones replaced that need to be replaced. Next, you want to work on cosmetic things or some things that won't affect the car's running but helps you keep the car maintained. If you got an odometer broken, get the odometer fixed. If you got a temperature gauge broken, get your temperature gauge fixed. If your windows don't roll up and down, get those things fixed. Sometimes those things may last 10, 20 years. Sometimes they don't. If for some reason it broke, get it fixed. When it's fixed, you'll enjoy driving your car a lot more than you will if it's broken. So take a little bit of money, set aside over the next couple of months, get your cosmetics or other irritating things fixed so that you can enjoy driving your car and it'll look good. This has nothing to do with your car running good, but if you get your car looking good, you won't be so embarrassed to drive it somewhere or feel bad about it looking bad. So if you got a car that needs a hood painted or something, take it somewhere, spend $300 or $400 and get the hood painted, and keep the car clean at least once a month, wax once a month, and then your car will stay looking good for as long as you feel like owning it. You want to get rid of a car because you're tired of it, not because it's falling apart on you and you don't want to drive it no more. One thing I want to encourage you never to do, never drive around with your check engine light on constantly. The reason I say that is you may get a check engine light for a minor problem, like a vacuum leak or a bad fuel cap or something like that. But if you drive around with that on all the time, you won't be notified if a new problem arises. So, if you have a check engine light, find out what the problem is, get it fixed. And it would also be a good thing to buy one of those code readers so that you can scan your own car if you have a check engine light come on while you're driving. Because depending on how serious the code is, depends on how quick you need to get that fixed. If your car's running rich or lean, you want to get that taken care of because you don't want to burn a valve and cause you to need to get a rebuilt motor. If you got a little thing like a fuel cap leaking, you can drive around with something like that for, a week or two before you get that dealt with. But don't drive around with a check engine light on, and get yourself a code reader. You can normally get them anywhere from $60 to several $100. Now the one that I like and I use is a scan gauge. I can monitor things in the car while I'm driving, and it's been a very useful tool to help me save on gas and things like that. So get yourself some kind of code reader and don't drive around with your check engine light on. But in the things I mentioned, a lot of stuff will be repairs after that. It's normal for a fuel pump to go out on a car. If you don't run a car out of gas and you use Lucas fuel injector cleaner, you may extend the life of your fuel pump. I've had fuel pumps last 250,000 miles. Now this car has 240,000 miles, and I don't know if it's ever had a fuel pump or not, but it hasn't in the 50,000 that I've driven it. So you may have things break, you may have things go wrong. That happens to new cars. So don't get discouraged if something breaks on your car. Just go ahead and get it fixed and keep driving your car for many years. This car has 243 on the clock. I plan on putting 500,000 on it before I let it go. So, and there's a guy that had a Volvo that he actually drove 3 million miles. The car is a 1966 model, I believe. So cars are made to last 200,000 miles easy. Many of them will last 300,000 and 400,000 miles if they're properly maintained. I'd rather put $400, $500, $800 into my car than to go sign up for car payments for $800, $900 a month, or even $400 a month car notes is too much. So you can have a nice car that you can be comfortable driving anywhere in the country if you just properly maintain it and keep it serviced. If you have a vehicle with over 200,000 miles or 300,000 kilometers, please leave a post below letting us know the mileage of your vehicle, the make, model, and year, so that others can see what kind of mileage they can achieve. Thank you very much for watching. If you feel that this information was beneficial, please like it and share it with your social media friends. You can also subscribe to my channel so that you can get notification of future videos that I post. Visit my channel. I have all types of do-it-yourself videos there. You can leave questions here and I'll try to respond to them as quick as possible. You can also visit my website at robertspinner.com. Thanks again for watching.